if I despise this young man one more time, right? I am just so sick of Tate. I know some people care for him, but I really have a disdain for this character, right? Like, how can one person be so unaccountable, just naive, just immature? I know he's a teenager, he's playing the role of a teenager, but oh my gosh, man. So anyways, Brady comes in, asks him if he's hungry, wants some wings, and he said no, he doesn't want anything. He's not hungry. All he can think about is how his life is turned upside down, and how Sophia's mom wants him and Sophia to have this child and to get married, and his life is turned upside down. So Brady said that I understand that it's a lot, it's overwhelming for both of you. You guys have your whole life ahead of you, and now this happened, and I'm sorry to hear that, but I am here for you in any way. And then, Tate decides to blame Ava for, quote unquote, blabbing to Mrs. Choi. If it wasn't her, him and Sophia would have been out of town to handle this procedure. And he said, listen, you can't blame Ava for that, which I agree with him. You can't blame Ava for that, right? It's not Ava's fault, right? It probably is a, misunderstanding. But again, if anything is to blame, it's you. So he said, I really don't need a lecture, Dad. I already know what I did, and me and Sophia was careful, and we used protection. I can't understand how this happened, but if she hadn't run her mouth, this wouldn't happen. And, Brady was saying, listen, like, I mean, you can't blame her for it. You have to take responsibility for your actions. If it wasn't for you and Sophia, it would have happened, and, maybe you shouldn't have slept with her, so this, wouldn't proceed any further. So I said, I know, I don't need a lecture. I need to go find Holly to tell her the truth, because I don't know how she's going to react and all that. And I said, if Tate was my son, he would have been out long time, with that kind of attitude. Like, he would have to find a job and man up and take care of his responsibility. Like, if you can lay down with somebody, you can take care of the responsibility of the consequences that happen, right? So Mrs. Choi comes in, and she and Brady finally get to talk, because Brady did message her to come over to talk about the situation. So Mrs. Choi is saying, listen, the only reasonable plan of action is for Tate and Sophia to get married. Teenage pregnancy is a big thing, and society looks down on that, and it would be great if Sophia and Tate could get married, and so the child doesn't, be born into wedlock. So she's very strong on her religious convictions, and she knows how it is, how it affected her daughter, and she wished that her daughter wasn't naive and trusting towards Tate, but this happened, and she is going to do what she has to do, what is best for her daughter and her unborn grandchild. And she believes Brady needs to be on board. So Brady said, to Tate's defense, that, listen, they're both young, and they had their lives planned out for them, and it is just too rushed, too soon for them to get married. They're not even a couple. As she said, this is the only way that I see fit. Like, I do not believe in this procedure being done. I'm pro-life, and at the end of the day, you guys are minors, but we are the parents, and we have to make decisions for you. So of course Tate is against it, and Brady is just saying, look, this is Sophia's decision. Whatever she decides, me and Tate are going to be there, and whatever decision, if she wants to keep the baby, we're gonna be responsible and look after her financially or whatever aspect. So Amy says, I hope to see that, and hopefully that happens. Looking forward to hear back from you, right? Again, I don't know. But anyways, Holly was over at the mansion. She called Doug. Doug was checking in on her after New Year's. They just like catching up. So she said she hasn't heard back from Tate. She in her mind think that Tate and Sophia went out of town to get this procedure done, and she's telling Doug how she feels about this whole thing, and it messing up the relationship. So Doug is saying, hopefully this is done and you guys can get back to living your lives and all that, right? So anyways, Sophia comes in, and she said that the butler let her in, because she told him that, they're friends, even though that's not true. So she said, so why are you over here? she said she wanted to apologize for how she treated her and how everything went down with her, finding out about her being pregnant with Tate's baby. So she said, I accept that, but you didn't have to come over here. Why are you here? So she said to her that, she has to be, basically kind of indirectly rubbing it in her face that she's carrying Tate's child, in another couple months she's going to be showing. So Holly's trying to put two and two together and saying, wait, you guys didn't do the procedure. So she said, oh, wow, I thought Tate told you. So she said, no, he didn't tell me yet, but either way, you guys are going forward with this. So she said, my mom found out, and my mom, you know how strict she is, so she wants us to have this baby and she wants us to get married. So of course Holly is shocked, upset, she can't believe this, right? Once again, Tate didn't tell her up front, or made it a point of duty for her to know first and foremost what's going on. So he comes over with his sorry self, and that time Doug was calling her because she wanted to just go meet up with him, get her mind off of this. So Tate apologized yet again for, keeping, not telling her up front, making sure that she knows what's going on. And she said, yeah, Sophia already beat you to it, so I already know that you guys are keeping the baby and you guys are possibly getting married. So Tate said, no, we're not getting married. That's not going to happen and all of that, right? So she said, I don't know how we're going to move past this. And Tate with his he's just so... what's the word for it? Is it tone that I don't know what's the word for it. Excuse me, right? Like Tate is gonna say to Holly that don't worry, everything is gonna go back to normal in 9 months. So she said, are you out of your mind? Like in 9 months you guys are gonna have a full alive blown baby, like fully here baby, I should say. I mean, he does not have a clue of nothing. So Holly just gets upset and runs out. She can't take it anymore. And I mean this. Like, if I had a daughter and she brings a Tate to my household, like, it's not going to happen. Like, you gotta go somewhere with it, because I am not putting up with somebody just as clueless, just as insensitive, naive and immature as Tate. I'm sorry. So Tate is in the square and Sophia is over there. She's having some hot chocolate. So he just sits down, and she said, there's something I need to tell you. I told Holly what happened, what's going on now. So he said, yeah, I just was over there. And she said, how did she take the news? So he said that she really didn't say much. She got angry and she stormed out. So Sophia's apologizing for how, it's affecting their relationship. She didn't really mean for this to happen. So he said, I know, understand you didn't, we just have to really deal with the situation as it is. So Ava comes over to the Demare mansion to confront Kristen about these text messages she's getting. And Kristen again is saying, for the last time, like I told Brady, I didn't send these. And she said, well, I hired Steve to pinpoint the location of these text messages, and it's coming from this mausoleum that you live in. So, like, what's your reason for this? Like, why? So she said, I didn't say that baby could have been one of my family members, Jody, Chanel, EJ. And Ava said, how this is ridiculous. Like, why would Jody have a reason to text me these messages? And she said, baby, he's just doing it for revenge. You guys used to be personal one time. So she said, we are just friends, and like, why would Chanel have anything to do with this? Like, me and Chanel are not close. And she said, well, EJ, you know how EJ get, and EJ and you are like oil and water, right? So anyway, she said, like, you need to cut the BS and you need to like stop this before I really call the cops on you. So she said it wasn't her, right? So at this point, Rachel is at the door over here in the conversation, because she's the one that's been doing this, right? So Rachel comes in and starts defending her mom, and she's saying like, stop hurting my mom, and you need to leave. And Ava said, excuse me, I was having a conversation with your mom. Like, I don't understand. So she said, you are bothering my mom and you need to leave. And Kristen saying, you're upsetting my daughter, so you need to leave, right? So she said, this ain't over, right? So that's when Rachel Ava leaves, and Kristen has a one-on-one talk with her daughter, because she knows what's going on, right? It doesn't take one-on-one to make two, right? Again, Rachel, at the end of the day, like, Rachel, this little girl needs to stay in her little child's place and not interrupt when you see two adults having a conversation. I don't know, but these new generation of kids. So she definitely tells Rachel a piece of her mind because she already found out that Rachel was behind it. So she said, listen, like, you can't go around threatening people. And Rachel is just calling the kettle black, right? By saying, listen, you did it, Uncle EJ do it, Stefano do it. So Kristen is saying, listen, not because we did it means that you should do it, right? And I am telling you, like, it's not okay to do that. You'll end up alone and hurt, and I don't want that for you. I want better for you. So this was a real genuine mom-daughter moment. You could see a little maturity in Kristen, right? So because of that, Kristen just laid down the law for Miss Rachel and said that, listen, no phone for you. I'm gonna have the servant change the Wi-Fi password so that you don't have access to any other devices, and you, Miss Thing, go to your room, right? So of course she's saying it's unfair, but she did storm out, right? So I agree with Kristen, like, she needed to be put back into her little place. So Doug and Julie are at the house, but she comes in because she can't sleep, and of course she's having a hard time with not having her husband next to her on the bed. And I think this January is also gonna be a year since the actor actually passed, so it must be tough and hard on her. So anyways, she was just telling Doug about how he would kiss her in the morning and in the night when they go to bed, and she really is needing that. So he just tries to offer some support for her, and he did get a notification on his phone from Holly. So he tells Julie that he has to leave to go, check in with her. So she said, I'll be fine, and at the time she was alone. She got some messages from some friends, Maggie, Jennifer, her Aunt Marie, and she just really can't answer because she's really having a hard time dealing with the loss of her husband, which is understandable. So Ava comes over to tell Brady, give him an update on what's going on with her with these text messages, right? So Brady has a lot going on already with Tate and the Sophia situation. So he tells Ava what's going on, that, Sophia's mom comes over and, basically wants the two of them to get married and them to have the baby. So Ava, feels bad for the situation, and she feels bad that she really said anything to Sophia's mom, so that really prevented them from having the procedure and all that. So Brady said, it is not your fault, don't blame yourself, right? So she said, I really didn't want to make it any worse, but I've had this thing with Kristen. I went over to her place and I confronted her about the text message, and she still denies it. She threw her family under the bus, and that's when Rachel came and threw me out of the house. So Brady said, listen, I am going to handle it once and for all. I'm sorry I didn't handle it first, and Ava understands, but he said, you know what, I'm going to go over there and talk to her. So Brady goes over there, guns are blazing, confronting Kristen about these text messages, and Kristen said, for the last time, I did not send those text messages. And he said, like, how childish and immature you can be, basically calling her names. And she's saying, will you listen to me for a second? Like, it wasn't me, it was Rachel. So that's where the conversation ended. I don't know if Brady is going to buy the fact that, it was actually Rachel, because he will feel as if Kristen is just, blaming any and anybody. But if he really knows Kristen, he knows that Kristen will protect her daughter. She will not throw her daughter under the bus like that. She is telling the truth, but let's see if he's that smart to figure out. So Doug was in the middle of the park, off the square there, and he has the envelope with the money. He was talking to Leo earlier about the money that he had for the necklace and trying to come up with the rest. So he was there at the park, and these two goons come up and they said if he had the money that he owes them, and he said that, yeah, I have some, but it was really hard to come by, and they're checking the money and they said you're short. So he said, that's what I'm trying to say, I will make sure to give you the rest. And the goons are saying, that's not what we want to hear. So a little bit later, remember, Holly ran off. So Holly was in the park and she sees the two goons and they run off, and there is Doug on the bench bloodied up and battered. So they gave him a beating, I guess. So she's trying to wake him up and he's unconscious at the moment. So that was it for this episode. So don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to my channel. Comment below your thoughts on today's episode. Like, are you a fan of Taste? Because I'm really not. So you're gonna see me rant and roast this guy every single time he's on the episode.